Here, in the vibrant heart of West Africa, a familiar tension begins to stir. Reports speak of a potential coup d'etat. The air is thick with anticipation, and the usual rhythms of daily life in bustling cities like Abidjan are punctuated by an unsettling disquiet. Unverified footage circulates with alarming speed across digital networks, depicting scenes of confusion and the distant sounds of gunfire. The internet reportedly flickers and dies, plunging parts of the nation into an information blackout. For the ordinary citizens of Ivory Coast, this is a deeply unsettling development. The world looks on, attempting to discern the true nature and scale of these events.
3 days for President Alassane Ouattara to leave power. Aware of what Ivory Coast has done, and unfortunately, punishment is inevitable. Starting today, Alassane Ouattara is banned. Each one is given 3 days to avoid the inevitable. 3 days before the streets speak, the crowds rise up, and Côte d'Ivoire writes, once again, a tragic page in its history. Everywhere, Laurent Gbagbo
runs again and officially becomes first king of Côte d'Ivoire. Why is he desperately clinging to a power he should have relinquished long ago? Since all you have to do is change the constitution after each term, and hey presto, you're president for life. Why, after a third term that's already contested, would he want to run for a fourth? The fact that Alassane Ouattara could run for a fourth term isn't necessarily good news for the country, I'll never know if Ouattara, if he ever decides to run for a term. I think that, as I said.
Hi, afternoon to all. Yesterday, 19 May 2025, were an internal coup in Ivory Coast. The president, Alassane Ouattara, might be killed or arrested at the moment. There is no internet at the moment, there is no internet connection, there is no visibility in Ivory Coast. So we, as a South African to the Solidarity Movement, we are watching the circumstances very carefully, because Ivory Coast is the only country in Africa to give America a chance to come attack Burkina Faso. So we are watching Ivory Coast very closely right now. We are waiting the final results, see what happens in Ivory Coast.
The current unease in Ivory Coast does not arise from a vacuum. It is the culmination of simmering discontent directed towards the leadership of President Alassane Ouattara. Citizens have gathered to demand the resignation of their president. Allegations of corruption have cast a long shadow over President Ouattara's administration. Furthermore, there is discontent with Ouattara's overly Western-aligned policies. Economic hardships and perceived inequalities fuel a powerful desire for a new direction. President Ouattara now finds himself at the heart of this storm. How a leader responds to such widespread public dissatisfaction is often a defining moment.
Africa is waking up. From the dusty streets of Ouagadougou to the urban crowds of Abidjan, a storm of resistance is reshaping the destiny of a continent. Today, we witness the fall of old powers and the rise of new leaders. In this episode, we break down the unrest shaking Côte d'Ivoire, the legacy of French influence across West Africa, and the revolutionary waves spreading across the region. This isn't just news, it's a movement. Africa is rising, and the world is watching. On the surface, it appears to be another political protest. But in the streets of Côte d'Ivoire, something deeper is stirring. Citizens are calling for the removal of President Alassane Ouattara, a man increasingly viewed as a symbol of French-backed governance and elite interests. Critics accuse Ouattara of ignoring rampant poverty, limiting press freedom, and allowing foreign interests to dominate the Ivorian economy. But the biggest grievance? His perceived loyalty to Paris, not to Abidjan. Tensions have been mounting for years. From the controversial third term to military crackdowns, the government's grip on power has only tightened. But now, with widespread unrest and whispers of a military coup, the tide may be turning. Protesters are waving Pan-African flags, chanting for justice, and calling for an end to French interference in their homeland. To understand what's happening now, we have to rewind the story. France may have granted independence to its African colonies decades ago, but it never truly let go. From the CFA franc, a currency controlled from Paris, to military agreements and corporate monopolies, France has maintained tight economic and political control over many former colonies. Leaders who challenged this system, from Thomas Sankara in Burkina Faso to Laurent Gbagbo in Côte d'Ivoire, often faced violent pushback or international isolation. But the new generation is waking up. Social media, youth movements, and Pan-African thinkers are exposing how deeply embedded these foreign systems remain, and how urgently they must be dismantled. Among the figures leading this wave of change is Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the 36-year-old military officer who took power in Burkina Faso in 2022. Traoré's rise was swift, but not accidental. Fed up with government corruption and foreign dependency, a young, inspired military class took charge. Traoré immediately signaled a shift, expelling French troops, challenging Western narratives, and forging closer ties with other African nations. He's become a symbol of African defiance, especially among the youth. To some, he is Africa's Che Guevara. To others, the embodiment of Thomas Sankara's unfinished revolution. His message is simple. Africa must be ruled by Africans. Sovereignty is not negotiable, and unity is the only way forward. Traoré is not alone. His revolution in Burkina Faso is part of a larger domino effect. In Mali, Niger, and Guinea, military leaders have taken similar actions, ejecting French troops, suspending foreign deals, and speaking the language of Pan-Africanism. These countries are forming new alliances. Not just military ones, but ideological, reclaiming identity, independence, and the right to determine their own future. While some in the West call these movements coups or threats to democracy, many Africans see them differently. They are seen as necessary corrections to decades of economic exploitation and political manipulation. For the first time in years, there's momentum, a real sense that the continent is turning a page. Pan-Africanism is no longer just a philosophy for intellectuals. It's becoming a call to action. Across social platforms, young Africans are uniting under shared messages. No to foreign bases, no to puppet leaders, yes to African unity. Regional organizations like WAMU and ECOWAS are under pressure to serve African people, not foreign donors. Movements are calling for an African economic system, one that rejects the CFA franc, redistributes resources fairly, and respects cultural identity.
The political climate in Ivory Coast is intricately woven into the broader tapestry of West African geopolitics. Allegations have surfaced that President Ouattara has been involved in clandestine strategies aimed at undermining the transitional leader of Burkina Faso, Captain Ibrahim Traoré. Traoré represents a new wave of African leadership, youthful, assertive, and fiercely independent. His rise to power marked a significant departure from the old guard. Traoré has actively sought relationships with non-Western powers, most notably Russia. This divergence in leadership styles and international allegiances naturally breeds tension. The fate of one nation becomes increasingly tied to the actions and ambitions of its neighbors. The intricate political landscape of West Africa is further complicated by the presence and interests of external global powers. In Ivory Coast, a deepening military partnership with the United States has become a significant point of discussion. The establishment of an American drone base on Ivorian soil is a tangible manifestation of this growing security cooperation. This increased US military footprint is seen with suspicion by some, perceived as a potential threat to regional independence. Captain Traoré's leadership in Burkina Faso has been characterized by a robust assertion of sovereignty. His government has expelled French military forces and moved to nationalize key Western-owned assets. The juxtaposition of Ivory Coast's US partnership with Burkina Faso's independent trajectory highlights the diverging paths being forged in West Africa. The recent history of the Sahel and West Africa is punctuated by political instability. Burkina Faso itself has been a theatre of significant turmoil, grappling with frequent Islamist violence since 2015. If the potential coup in Ivory Coast proves successful, the implications could be far-reaching. It could act as a catalyst, potentially triggering a broader revolutionary wave across West Africa. Captain Traoré's leadership in Burkina Faso has introduced a distinct model emphasizing sovereignty and a re-evaluation of international partnerships. The future of Ivory Coast, and indeed West Africa, hangs in a delicate balance. Will the current situation in Abidjan escalate, leading to a fundamental shift in the country's political direction? The world watches, wondering if this is the moment the currents of change will forcefully reshape yet another West African nation. Possible coup in Ivory Coast, a tipping point for West African politics?